Hello, thank you for joining me again as we continue our exploration of Course in Miracles. I know if you've been following this real time, it has been a few weeks between lessons. I was in Australia, I was traveling, I was in Sydney for a time and did a little retreat with a friend, which was great. And then I came back to New Jersey, and then I've been helping some friends with their projects. One of which is to build an edible garden. So we've been seeding and preparing the beds. So that has been where my life force energy has predominantly been, and then just picking up with regular classes and getting back on track with my regular one-on-one sessions. So here I am, however, and it is just after Easter. It is the Tuesday after Easter, and I feel that Easter is a significant time. It is the beginning of the real new year, the historical new year, not the bureaucratic new year of January 1st, which is really ridiculous when you think about it, because New Year happens mid-cycle, whether you're in the Northern Hemisphere or the Southern Hemisphere. January 1st is smack bang in the middle of winter in the Northern Hemisphere, and smack bang in the height of summer in the Southern Hemisphere. And it just doesn't make sense. The true historical and natural New Year is around this time. And in fact, Easter and Passover, Easter is, because of Passover, is part of that New Year celebration historically. So I feel that this time is a significant time, and it's a good time to start again. And so today our lesson will be lesson 51. We'll be reading a section of the text from chapter 1. We're going back to the beginning. We are starting again. And then, gosh, it's been such a long time. We will be reviewing a principle of the miracles. I can't remember exactly what number it is, maybe principle number 19. I will check in between before I cut to share the screen with you. But let's go to our reading of the text next. So I'm going to go ahead now and share the screen. And so we click on Read A Course in Miracles, clicking on the text. We are in chapter 1. And we are in section 3, Atonement and Miracles. Paragraph 1. I am in charge of the process of atonement, which I undertook to begin. When you offer a miracle to any of my brothers, you do it to yourself and me. The reason you come before me is that I do not need miracles for my own atonement, but I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. My part in the atonement is the cancelling out of all errors that you could not otherwise correct. When you have been restored to the recognition of your original state, you naturally become part of the atonement yourself. As you share my unwillingness to accept error in yourself and others, you must join the great crusade to correct it. Listen to my voice. Learn to undo error and act to correct it. The power to work miracles belongs to you. I will provide the opportunities to do them, but you must be ready and willing. Doing them will bring conviction in the ability, because conviction comes through accomplishment. The ability is the potential. The achievement is its expression. And the atonement, which is the natural profession of the children of God, is the purpose. Okay. Let's look at what the definition of atonement is. Okay, let me go back actually to share the screen. And let's look up the first mentions of atonement. And so we have it in chapter 1, section 1, which is the principles of miracles. Okay, and so we have in chapter 1, section 1, atoning means undoing. The undoing of fear as an essential part of the atonement. Value of miracles, okay. They thus atone for your errors, so they thus undo your errors by freeing you from your nightmares. Okay. All right. And so here we are already in section 3. Okay. So atonement is undoing. Undoing from what? Undoing of what? So seeing as this is A Course in Miracles and we're several sections of the text in, we've read quite a number of chapters so far, we know that the undoing must be the undoing of the error of our thinking. The error of our thinking, the belief in separation, which has created the illusions in the first place and created the conditions for that which is unloving, which is sin. And so the atonement is the undoing of all of that. But what's for me striking about this paragraph is that it's written in the first person and it's I. And so that I is not me, the little me sitting here, the Andrea me. The I is the voice of Christ, the voice of Jesus. Remember too that we started this experiment of this exploration in the middle of the text. I started it because I wanted to follow the timeline of a year. Even though the text was compiled over a number of years, in the text there is mention of Christmas and there is mention of Easter. And so when I started this project, I wanted to start at that same time. And so that's why we started the text in the middle. And now we're going right back to the beginning. And right back at the beginning, we are met with the voice of Christ himself. And so he's saying, I am in charge of the process of atonement. When you offer a miracle to any of my brothers, you do it to yourself and me. So the offer or the intent, the applying this, the small personal will to a miraculous outcome, which would be peaceful and loving, that has a healing effect, that has a benefit to not only yourself, but to Christ as well. And I love this because it gives us accountability. What is it that we're broadcasting moment to moment? What is the quality of our thinking? What is the quality of our treating, of our behaving, of our actions? He says, the reason you come before me is that I do not need miracles for my own atonement, because there's nothing for him to undo. But I stand at the end in case you fail temporarily. I like this too, because he is offering himself as that guide, as that presence. Also a reminder that we're not alone, which should move you to tears. He says, my part in the atonement is the canceling out of all errors that you could not otherwise correct. That's difficult for us because this world, this reality, the temporal world is so convincing for us. Our point of view is through our limited senses, not necessarily through our eternal spirit self that is in constant communion with the divine. And so it's this part that believes the separation that can't, in using this language, that can't correct any of the errors on its own. But what we learn later in the text is that all that's required is our small willingness, right? So perhaps it's helpful for us that we started in the middle, where we started at university level and now we get to go back to kindergarten and start again and make sure that we've got everything, that our understanding is as precise as it can be. And again, speaking to the accountability in this paragraph, he says, as you share my unwillingness to accept error in yourself and others, you must join the great crusade to correct it. And then he gives instructions: listen to my voice, learn to undo error and act to correct it. So again, that accountability is being reinforced, and also his relationship to us is being reinforced. Listen to my voice. Listen to my voice. We're being given a directive. So how do we do that? How do we listen to his voice? And so the answer to that is in prayer and in meditation. The voice of the Creator can be experienced, not unlike your own voice, as your own voice. Sometimes the voice is not your voice, but my experience is that the voice of God is as close to you as your own thoughts. It's just simply being open and trusting for that wisdom to come. We're being affirmed that the power to work miracles belongs to us. And so that's exciting and fun. And even just reading that should open up something beautiful inside, that we are the source. And the reason why we are the source is because we are channels and sources of unconditional love if we don't get in our own way through judgment and through fear and doubt and so on. All right, so let's go to the second paragraph. I'm going to share the screen again. The second paragraph is short. Heaven and earth shall pass away means that they will not continue to exist as separate states. My word, which is the resurrection of the life, shall not pass away because life is eternal. You are the work of God, and his work is wholly lovable and wholly loving. This is how a man must think of himself in his heart, because this is what he is. How do we create the conditions for us to be the miracle? The answer is right there. So say to yourself, I am the work of God. I am wholly lovable. I am wholly loving. Let's go to paragraph 3. The forgiven are the means of the atonement. Being filled with spirit, they forgive in return. Those who are released must join in releasing their brothers, for this is the plan of the atonement. Miracles are the way in which minds that serve the Holy Spirit unite with me for the salvation or release of all God's creations. So beautiful. I have too many windows open. So I keep hitting the wrong one. Oh, good. So forgiveness. Forgiveness, I feel like a good way to think of that which is unforgiven as small knots, little tight bundles that need to be undone. So the atonement is the undoing of these tight little bundles of unforgiveness. Unforgiveness has to be a limitation in thinking. It's when our personality mind is not seeing what happened, what they did to us from God's perspective. We're not seeing their holy innocence. We're not seeing their innocence. We're not seeing that they, like us, are holy, loving, and lovable. And that's the error of the thinking. So when people behave in ways that don't feel good, that create chaos, it's because they themselves must be believing the illusion. So where does that end? Where does that cycle get interrupted? It only takes one, which is what we're being reminded. So part of our purpose here is to forgive. The pathway is committing or agreeing to make our lives, our life purpose around the golden rule. Doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, loving our neighbor as ourselves. This, according to the text, is the path to atonement. This paragraph says, miracles are the way in which minds that serve the Holy Spirit unite with me for the salvational release of all God's creations. What's interesting for me about this is that the Holy Spirit is separate from me. We are told that there is the Father, the infinite creator, his Son, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit, the Holy Trinity. So is me here the personality of Jesus? Because if you were to ask me, I would have said that Jesus and the Holy Spirit were one. So it's interesting. Let's go on to paragraph 4, but I'm curious what your thoughts are about it. I'm the only one who can perform miracles indiscriminately because I am the atonement. You have a role in the atonement, which I will dictate to you. Ask me which miracles you should perform. This spares you needless effort because you will be acting under direct communication. The impersonal nature of the miracle is an essential ingredient because it enables me to direct its application. And under my guidance, miracles lead to the highly personal experience of revelation. A guide does not control, but he does direct, leaving it up to you to follow. Lead us not into temptation means recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance. Oh, good. So I love it when it's prescriptive, when we're given direct prescriptions. So this section of the text is so rich. We are being reminded squarely, directly, that we are not alone. We are being invited to hear his voice, Jesus's voice. We're being invited to enter into a dialogue, to have a conversation. The responsibility to be the cause of a miracle is off our shoulders. We're learning that it's not us that's doing it. It is Jesus who is the one, who is the atonement, who is the undoing. And so we're being prescriptively invited here in paragraph 4 to ask him which miracles you should perform. We're also being told that the impersonal nature of the miracle is an essential ingredient because it enables me, it enables Jesus to direct its application, and under Jesus's guidance, miracles lead to the highly personal experience of revelation. I wonder too whether if we are receiving the direction on where to direct a miracle, to send our prayer, to send our loving intent, to use the capacity of our imagination to cast a different kind of outcome, by getting out of our own way, we don't affect the outcome. I feel like it goes back to just basic quantum physics, where that split particle experiment showed that when the particles were observed, it changed the outcome of their behavior. And so I wonder if by getting out of our own way, by not choosing miracles that are personal to us, but rather asking Jesus for where to direct our attention in order to be an instrument of the miracle, that creates the outcome of miracles, because there's no resistance or influence by our own light. Trust me when I say that our attention is light. When we put our attention on something, it's like a little flashlight is beaming on that which we are putting our attention, which is why our attention is such a precious commodity. It's being fought over. It's being vied for. And while I'm on this little rant, it's important to be vigilant to where you're putting your attention, to what you're putting your attention on. And at the simplest level, asking yourself, does this, which I'm putting my attention on, bring me closer to love and peace, to self-knowledge, to freedom, to sovereignty, or does it pull me directly away? Does it take me into fear and doubt? Do I feel constricted? Do I feel stress? And if that's the case, that's not where you want to put your attention. Your attention's being hijacked. So then to this paragraph finishes with, lead us not into temptation. And so that's from the Lord's Prayer. So lead us not into temptation means it's being interpreted for us. Recognize your errors and choose to abandon them by following my guidance. So at the simplest, subtlest level, your error could be putting your attention on that which feeds fear and doubt and worry and stress and contributes to your bodily sickness. It creates sickness in the body. Stress creates sickness in the body. It's basic, it's fundamental truth. So be vigilant to the temptations. Recognize your errors. Recognize where you're putting your attention on things that don't serve you, that don't bring joy, that don't bring you closer to love and to your holy nature. Make a choice to abandon them and follow his guidance. Again, he's asking you to turn to him, to ask him for guidance. Let's go back to share the screen for paragraph 5. Error cannot really threaten truth, which can always withstand it. Only the error is actually vulnerable. You are free to establish your kingdom where you see fit, but the right choice is inevitable if you remember this. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. Atonement undoes all errors in this respect and thus uproots the source of fear. Whenever you experience God's reassurances as threat, it is always because you are defending misplaced or misdirected loyalty. When you project this to others, you imprison them, but only to the extent to which you reinforce errors they have already made. This makes them vulnerable to the distortions of others, since their own perception of themselves is distorted. The miracle worker can only bless them, and this undoes their distortion and frees them from prison. I love it when we are given these little stanzas to take a screenshot, commit to memory. We can say, Spirit is in a state of grace forever. My reality is only spirit. Therefore, I am in a state of grace forever. Spirit is in a state of grace forever. My reality is only spirit. Therefore, I am in a state of grace forever. And so again, if we're believing that, if we're sinking deeply into that truth, what does that look like for us? How do we show up in the world? And then, by the way that we show up in the world, how does the world show up for us, being that mirror, being that reflection? The paragraph goes on to say, atonement, which is the undoing, undoes all errors in this respect, because we're remembering that we are only spirit. What we are is only spirit. When we remember that we are only spirit, then that undoes the source of fear, because fear belongs in the realm of the temporal. We fear for the vulnerability of our biology, of our senses. We are afraid that we will lose our sight, lose our hearing, lose our mental capacity, lose our minds, lose the physical health of our bodies. That's the fear. And that's what we feel gets threatened. And this whole conversation can feel threatening to the part of the mind that identifies with the body, the part of the personality that is identified as finite, the part that is like a smokescreen to our spirit essence, our spirit nature, the part of us that can have a direct communication with Jesus. And this is why A Course is so amazing, because it's inviting us, after all these years of thousands of years of not being given permission to have a direct relationship with God, that here we're being invited, which is really what the New Testament was for. The New Testament is telling us that this is the new covenant. The new covenant is to have this direct relationship with God. That the old covenant, the Old Testament, is for a bygone era. And what I like to say is that it deserves to be archived and only referenced as a curiosity, not as a holy work, but more as a predecessor to finally the revelation of truth, and seems to be being reinforced here in this work that came through in the 50s as the voice of Jesus. So we're again given a prescription in this paragraph of how to be a part of the solution, what to do. So first we hear his voice. Number 2, we ask which miracles shall we participate in, and we listen for the answer. And then finally, the miracle worker blesses. That's what the miracle worker does. It doesn't judge. It doesn't argue. It doesn't get angry or upset. The miracle worker simply blesses. So again, applying to our everyday lives. So who would I be if this was my prescription to live? Who would I be if this was my choice of the state of grace, of using this life force energy to be that in the world? Let's continue for paragraph 6. You respond to what you perceive, and as you perceive, so shall you behave. The golden rule asks you to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. See? This means that the perception of both must be accurate. The golden rule is the rule for appropriate behavior. You cannot behave appropriately unless you perceive correctly. Since you and your neighbor are equal members of one family, as you perceive both, so you will do to both. You should look out from the perception of your own holiness to the holiness of others. Okay, it turns out I was ahead of the curve there. The golden rule is our prescription to live. It's very simple. I'm going to go back to share the screen so that we can continue for paragraph 7. Miracles arise from a mind that is ready for them. By being united, this mind goes out to everyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself. The impersonal nature of miracles is because the atonement itself is one, uniting all creations with their creator. As an expression of what you truly are, the miracle places the mind in a state of grace. The mind then naturally welcomes the host within and the stranger without. When you bring in the stranger, he becomes your brother. You can hear that this is the medicine, right? We can continue for paragraph 8. That the miracle may have effects on your brothers that you may not recognize is not your concern. The miracle will always bless you. Miracles you are not asked to perform have not lost their value. They are still expressions of your own state of grace. But the action aspect of the miracles should be controlled by me because of my complete awareness of the whole plan. The impersonal nature of miracle-mindedness ensures your grace, but only I am in a position to know where they can be bestowed. What moves me about this paragraph is the reminder, perhaps, or maybe the disclosure, I'm not sure, that God knows the whole plan. We're reminded that we don't, not from our point of view. Until we share God's vision, until we see through his eyes, we can only see from our limited perspective. But for me, this is a great comfort to know that God knows the whole plan, that there is a plan. If there is a plan, it means that there are no mistakes in God's plan. The uncomfortable and the painful that we experience is outside of God's plan. Those things are an effect of the error of our thinking. But this section is reminding us that what we are is spirit. It's almost as though the spirit self is being ignited to wake up that small part of the mind that has forgotten its grace. Let's go to paragraph 9 now. Oh, last one. Miracles are selective only in the sense that they are directed towards those who can use them for themselves. Since this makes it inevitable that they will extend them to others, a strong chain of atonement is welded. However, this selectivity takes no account of the magnitude of the miracle itself, because the concept of size exists on a plane that is itself unreal. Since the miracle aims at restoring the awareness of reality, it would not be useful if it were bound by laws that govern the error it aims to correct. Right? Yeah, so miracles are a supernatural phenomenon and are experienced at the level of a deeper part of our consciousness, which is that spirit aspect. It seems like it's like the dreamer waking up to have awareness of the night dream, that the awakened dreamer's point of view cannot be convinced that the night dream was real, even though there may be residue, even emotional remnants of that night dream. I had a very convincing night dream last night, and I can still feel the remnants of it. It was that convincing. But as I sit here having this conversation with you, that dream, the reality of it, the ingredients of it, the characters in it are nowhere to be found, not as they showed up in that night dream. All right, fantastic. So from here, we go to our lesson. So I'm just going to go back to share the screen again. We go back to the workbook for students, and we are at lesson 51. So lesson 51 is a review. Let's go back. All right. So that means actually we are at lesson 61, maybe. So here we are. Lesson 61. I'm going to let the narrator read it for us.
Lesson 61. I am the light of the world. Who is the light of the world except God's Son? This then is merely a statement of the truth about yourself. It is the opposite of a statement of pride, of arrogance, or of self-deception. It does not describe the self-concept you have made. It does not refer to any of the characteristics with which you have endowed your idols. It refers to you as you were created by God. It simply states the truth. To the ego, today's idea is the epitome of self-glorification. But the ego does not understand humility, mistaking it for self-debasement. Humility consists of accepting your role in salvation and in taking no other. It is not humility to insist you cannot be the light of the world if that is the function God assigned to you. It is only arrogance that would assert this function cannot be for you, and arrogance is always of the ego.
Mm.
True humility requires that you accept today's idea because it is God's voice which tells you it is true. This is a beginning step in accepting your real function on earth. It is a giant stride toward taking your rightful place in salvation. It is a positive assertion of your right to be saved and an acknowledgement of the power that is given you to save others. You will want to think about this idea as often as possible today. It is the perfect answer to all illusions and therefore to all temptation. It brings all the images you have made about yourself to the truth and helps you depart in peace, unburdened and certain of your purpose. As many practice periods as possible should be undertaken today, although each one need not exceed a minute or two. They should begin with telling yourself, I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I am here. Then think about these statements for a short while, preferably with your eyes closed if the situation permits. Let a few related thoughts come to you, and repeat the idea to yourself if your mind wanders away from the central thought. Be sure both to begin and end the day with a practice period. Thus you will awaken with an acknowledgement of the truth about yourself, reinforce it throughout the day, and turn to sleep as you reaffirm your function and your only purpose here. These 2 practice periods may be longer than the rest if you find them helpful and want to extend them. Today's idea goes far beyond the ego's petty views of what you are and what your purpose is. As a bringer of salvation, this is obviously necessary. This is the first of a number of giant steps we will take in the next few weeks. Try today to begin to build a firm foundation for these advances. You are the light of the world. God has built his plan for the salvation of his Son on you.
Wow, so perfect. So you notice that I skipped ahead to lesson 61, which might feel a little jarring, but the lessons in between are reviews of the lessons that we've done so far. And so my choice, my decision in this experiment is to practice the whole lessons together and to skip the reviews. So that's why we are at lesson 61. So we've gone from lesson 50 to lesson 61. But it's a beautiful lesson. And so the instructions are to practice in the morning upon rising, in the evening before retiring for 1 to 2 minutes, and as many times throughout the day. So in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again so that you can see the language while I set the timer. But as always, just start to bring your attention away from all that's come before, the fullness of your day. Start to notice the unconditional love and support that's here as the floor, as the air, as all the things that are around you. Give yourself permission to be here, to be where your body is, to be where your feet are. Give yourself permission to be where your feet are. When we're in our bodies, we become embodied, and we're less likely to lose things, drop things, smash things, hurt things, including ourselves, cut things. So it's always nice to give ourselves a moment to feel what it is to be in our bodies, to be where our bodies are. And so if you're seated, settle into the support that's here. Relax into the support that's here. When you're ready, bring your attention to your breath and just notice the in and the out. the gift and the grace of your own breathing. And when you're ready, you can let your eyelids rest over your eyes. I'm going to go ahead and share the screen again so that you can see the language, and we'll do a 2-minute practice together. So I'm just going to go ahead and set the timer. All right, starting now. I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I am here. I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I am here. I am the light of the world. That is my only function. That is why I am here. All right. So that is the end of our timer. And so how was that for you? So practicing today's idea again in the morning, in the evening, and then as many times as possible throughout the day. And so I'm going to go back and share the screen again, because now we're going to our principle of miracles. So that's in chapter 1, section 1, the principle of miracles. And we are at miracle number 19. And so what I have said before is, if you like, you can take a screenshot of the principle that we're on so that you can contemplate this as an added meditation throughout your day. Number 19. Miracles make minds one in God, because the sonship is the sum of all that God created. Miracles, therefore, reflect the laws of eternity, not of time. And this reminds us of the section of the text that has us recalling that what we are is wholly loving, wholly lovable, that we are holy, that we are spirit, that we are grace, and the lesson reminds us that we are light. And so these reminders are pointing us to our eternal nature, the part of us that is one with the Creator, never was separate. And so it's through that remembrance and through choosing to identify or to see ourselves in that way, we become the instrument of miracles. We become the medicine. Fantastic. All right. So before I conclude this video, as always, I'd like to invite you to join the monthly meditation classes or the natural healing self-help classes. You can join virtually or in person if you happen to be where I am, where the body is. So if you want to join virtually, just hop onto the calendar, the Alila Center calendar, www.alilacenter.org. The meditation class is on the third Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the natural healing self-help class is on the fourth Monday of the month. And both of them are opportunities to be still, to calm the mind, to bring the medicine home here first into your own nature. It just helps anchor in all that we talk about here. So I would love for you to join. It's by contribution. It's up to you ultimately what you wish to contribute, but through the instructions, when you register via Zoom, the instructions are there and you can make your choice. So wonderful. So thank you again for joining with me, and thank you for your patience, and I will see you again next time. Bye.